It had been a peculiar day, capping off an odd week, as Matthew Richardson departed for work that morning. An unease lingered in the air, inexplicable yet palpable. It had been gnawing him since his wife mentioned the upcoming party a week prior, that he couldn't pinpoint why. He hadn't consciously dwelled on it, nor could he articulate it, but a sense of restlessness pervaded his thoughts, as if anticipating an impending disruption. It unsettled him, casting a shadow over his entire day at work. Despite his efforts to focus, he couldn't shake off the feeling of apprehension. The prospect of attending his wife's office party held little appeal. He never relished mingling with her colleagues, particularly those pompous lawyers. Damn lawyers, he muttered to himself, recalling their arrogance. They think they're above everyone. Yet his wife's insistence on attending echoed in his mind, her words ringing clear. You can't skip the office Christmas party, Matthew. It wouldn't be right. Resigned to complying with her wishes, as he always did, Matthew closed his computer at the week's end. His gaze fell upon a photograph of his two sons, taken during a fishing trip the previous year. A warmth spread across his face as he remembered the joy of that moment. Amidst the turmoil of recent months, his bond with his boys remained a beacon of light in his life. Midway through his journey home, Matthew encountered a traffic jam caused by an accident in the right lane of the highway. Lost in his thoughts, he realized he hadn't been paying attention to his surroundings. Consequently, he arrived home about 15 minutes later than usual, bracing himself for what awaited him instead of the usual greeting kiss from his wife. Upon entering, Matthew anticipated receiving nothing but a sarcastic remark from his wife, and he wasn't disappointed. Couldn't manage to get home on time for once, could you? Christine complained, her tone sharp. Now hurry up and change into that grey pinstripe suit of yours. It's my favorite. Matthew inwardly shook his head. He had intended to wear his dark blue suit, which he believed projected more authority. While the grey suit was fine, he felt it made him blend into the background too much, a situation he wished to avoid in the company of these people. The holiday party hosted by Peter Anderson, the newest partner at Milwaukee's most prestigious criminal law firm, was taking place at his spacious residence in Milwaukee downtown. As they stepped inside, Matthew sensed Christine growing increasingly tense. Her rapid speech and nervous blinking betrayed her stress, signaling her discomfort in the situation. Approaching the door to what seemed like a spacious gathering area, Christine's grip on his arm tightened, pulling him aside and pressing him against the wall, enveloping him in her embrace. Christine, what's wrong? Matthew inquired, concerned. Nothing. I just needed to tell you something, she replied softly. Listen, Matthew, you know I love you, always have. Whatever happens tonight, it won't change anything between us. Our bond remains solid. Just remember that, okay? I understand you're not comfortable with these people, but as long as you keep in mind that we're okay, you'll be fine. I didn't understand, Matthew admitted, puzzled. You're right. I don't fit in with these lawyers and high-powered individuals, but what's different tonight? These gatherings have never been enjoyable for me. I'll endure it like always. Christine stepped back, allowing him to lead her into the room. At the center of attention stood Anderson, presiding over a lavish bar adorned with a painting of a reclining nude woman. Matthew veered to the side of the bar, fetching a white wine for Christine and a scotch for himself. Catching Anderson's gaze, they exchanged a brief nod. But as Anderson flashed a sinister grin, Matthew couldn't help but feel a surge of animosity towards him. That look unsettled him deeply, leaving him to wonder if his dislike for Anderson went deeper than he realized. Matthew retrieved the two glasses and intercepted Christine, who was making her way towards Anderson and his circle. Due to her maneuvering, Matthew found himself with his back against the bar, positioned on the outer edge of the group. Meanwhile, Christine smoothly approached Anderson, receiving a polite peck on the cheek from him before he resumed his pontification, oblivious to Matthew's presence. Lost in his own thoughts, Matthew paid little attention to the conversation swirling around him. His gaze wandered, landing momentarily on a provocative nude painting adorning the room. He couldn't help but find it fitting for Anderson to display such a piece prominently. As Matthew refocused on the room, he noticed several pairs of eyes darting in his direction. Instinctively, he glanced down at his suit, checking for any spills or, heaven forbid, an open fly. Finding nothing amiss, he felt a growing unease as the lingering looks persisted. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, Matthew turned his attention back to the bar, stealing another glance at the erotic painting. The image depicted a red-haired woman reclining nude on a bed, her expression suggestive of recent pleasure. It was a look familiar to Matthew, one he recognized all too well. Matthew suddenly realized that the woman depicted in the painting was none other than his wife standing beside him. His thoughts ceased, and so did his breathing. Mouth agape, he stared fixedly at the artwork, oblivious to the exchanged smirks between Anderson and his wife. The room's attention gradually shifted towards Matthew, some wearing smirks, while others showed pity on their faces. For what felt like an eternity, though it was likely only about 15 seconds, Matthew struggled to regain his composure. Finally, he managed to whisper to his wife, breaking the tense silence that had fallen over the room. "That's you." Matthew's whisper echoed through the now silent room, carrying more weight than a shout. "No," Christine responded quietly. "That woman has red-haired hair, whereas I have black, silly." She let out a soft giggle, though it only seemed to underscore the falsehood of her statement. Several pairs of eyes darted between Christine and the painting, some stifling laughter. Anderson shot Christine a quick wink, prompting Matthew to glance between his wife and the painting once more. With a voice nearly devoid of emotion, he remarked, "Red-haired hair, but black pubic hair. Your pubic hair." Christine scrutinized the painting, realizing for the first time that the artist had accurately depicted the color of her pubic hair, unlike the rest of her hair, which was rendered redhead. She pondered whether it was intentional or an oversight, though in the grand scheme of things, it hardly mattered. She knew Matthew would eventually recognize her in the painting, but neither she nor Anderson had anticipated the revelation to come so swiftly. Matthew found himself seized by two pairs of strong hands, forcibly ushered out of the main room into a smaller adjacent space. Moments later, Anderson and Christine joined them, the former wearing a contemptuous sneer directed at Matthew. "Listen, you insignificant worm," Anderson began, his tone dripping with disdain. "This is how things will be from now on. Your wife belongs to me, and you'll maintain the facade of your home life. Resist, and the firm will represent Christine, stripping you of everything, and I'll still be enjoying her company." Caught between Anderson's menacing presence and his wife's unexpected revelation, Matthew felt utterly trapped. "This has been going on for some time, and you were none the wiser," Christine explained matter-of-factly. "You haven't lost anything. We're not changing anything. You and I will carry on as usual, and I'll continue my relationship with Benjamin, where I'll take half of everything in a divorce. The choice is yours." She leveled a sober gaze at him. "Most of our colleagues and friends already suspect your inadequacy. The only ones in the dark are our sons and your buddies. This is about your ego. We can still go on being husband and wife, with all it entails," Matthew retorted bitterly. "Or why would I ever want to touch you again? You've made it abundantly clear you're with him. I'm just an afterthought. I won't settle for being Peter Anderson's leftovers. Feel better now that you've had your say. What's next? Accusing me of having cooties. God, he's spot on about you being a small man." Anderson's laughter echoed through the room as Matthew was escorted out, then out of the house. The sound of laughter followed him as he struggled to hold back tears. "Did you see the look on Matthew's face when he saw that painting?" Anderson crowed to Christine. "He's sharp enough to figure out when that was painted, or at least started." "Yeah, I suppose I owe him an apology," Christine admitted reluctantly. "But after he practically accused me of cheating, I felt the need to hit back. The painting seemed like a brilliant idea at the time. But you were the one cheating on him." Anderson chuckled at her confession. As Christine followed Matthew out, she knew she would have to calm her husband down. Truthfully, over the past year, Matthew had confronted his wife several times when things didn't quite add up. Each time Christine had rebuffed him, accusing him of not trusting her. This line of defense always left Matthew feeling guilty for questioning his wife of 18 years. As they drove home, Matthew reflected on Christine's 13-year career at Desmond Peterson LLC. After staying home to raise their two sons until they started school, Christine expressed her desire to return to work. Initially assigned to Old Man Peterson, the firm's senior partner, Christine's situation changed when Peterson retired 5 years ago, replaced by 33-year-old Jeff Anderson, who made 40-year-old Christine uneasy with the way he looked at her, she confessed. Despite this discomfort, Christine enthusiastically discussed her new boss for the first 2 months, then abruptly stopped mentioning him altogether. Matthew knew that Christine still turned heads with her long hair and striking curves. He considered her the most beautiful woman he had ever met, and often wondered how he had been fortunate enough to win her heart. Not that Matthew was unattractive. He was reserved and analytical, qualities commonly associated with accountants, which indeed he was. When Matthew learned that Christine's new boss was a tall, handsome younger man, he decided to keep tabs on his wife's activities. Initially, Christine did not work late with Anderson any more than she had with the old man, at least not until about a year ago. The late nights became more frequent, culminating in a week-long trip to Detroit with Anderson for some legal symposium. Matthew wasn't thrilled about Christine having to go, but he understood that as her boss's assistant, travel was sometimes unavoidable. He voiced his concerns to Christine, only to be met with a loud accusation of distrust, despite their 18 years of marriage. The holiday spirit faded as Matthew returned home, pouring himself a single malt scotch and sinking into his favorite armchair. "It's not every day your life gets turned upside down in a matter of minutes," he muttered, feeling utterly lost. For the past decade, at least until this past year, Matthew had believed his marriage was perfect. Then cracks started appearing, though he initially refused to acknowledge them. Even when confronted, Christine denied their existence. Apart from the late nights and the trip to Detroit, their relationship seemed normal. The intimacy hadn't suddenly intensified or diminished. He had observed the shift in his wife's wardrobe, noticing it trend towards younger and sexier styles. Lately, her attitude towards him had also taken a turn. Matthew drowned his thoughts in several glasses of single malt before drifting off to sleep in his armchair while watching the classic Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life. Christine eventually roused him at 2:10 a.m., urging him to join her in the couple's bed. "I never saw it coming," Matthew muttered as he stirred. "Christine, I'm not sure I'd ever want the boys to see that painting," Matthew remarked, his tone devoid of emotion. Christine's face flushed deeply, realizing she hadn't considered her children when posing for the portrait. Matthew struggled to contain his anger, drawing on the lessons from his deceased father-in-law to regain control. As he unclenched his fists, Christine noticed the movement, her eyes widening in apprehension. A cold realization washed over her, sensing that she had pushed her husband to his breaking point. "Well, since we're being open and honest, how about answering 2 questions for me?" Matthew's voice was calm but firm. "Why? And for how long?" Christine hesitated, her expression shifting as she contemplated the carpet pile. "We didn't plan for this to happen," she finally admitted, her voice tinged with regret. "About a year ago, we discovered we had a lot in common. You and I had grown stagnant. Benjamin's a take-charge kind of guy, and he kind of took charge of me. I liked it. I liked it a lot. And then when you sort of accused me of cheating, I got angry, and Benjamin, I devised a way for me to get even. But you were already cheating." "That's not getting even, that's rubbing my face in it," Matthew interjected, his tone edged with bitterness. Christine glanced up as if to reply, then lowered her head in silence. "So, what you're telling me is that you opted for something new and exciting over our years of familiarity," Matthew remarked with a tinge of hurt. "What we had for all those years didn't mean anything to you." "I still love you, Matthew. I'm just not in love with you anymore," Christine confessed softly. "Benjamin and I connect on so many levels, and it's new and exciting," Christine continued, her voice tinged with excitement. "Of course it is, you bimbo," Matthew snapped. "You're a new piece of meat to him, and he's a new toy to you. You haven't endured the rigors of everyday life with him, raising children or sharing daily chores. And what's with that picture? You'd never let me take a risque cell phone photo of you, but you pose naked and get drilled by some painters so Mr. Miracle can hang you in plain sight in his home for everyone to admire your beauty." Christine blushed deeply once more, suddenly finding great interest in her shoes. Matthew kept his gaze fixed on her until she eventually looked up. It was exhilarating being naked in front of another man right after making love with Benjamin, knowing he was recording our intimacy for everyone, Christine admitted. "Did you sleep with the painter too?" Matthew blurted out. "Well, just once after my last posing session. Benjamin and I felt we owed him one after teasing him all week. Fair is fair, Christine responded, her tone nonchalant. After a few minutes of tense silence, Matthew broached the subject cautiously. Did you forget about the boys? The boys? What do they have to do with this? Christine retorted. They're out of the house now, living their own lives. This has nothing to do with them. You don't see how breaking up our family will impact them. Matthew countered firmly. You're not going to tear our family apart. You don't want anyone else to know you're a cheater, Christine mocked. Besides, I know you still love me. Give me this for a little while, and after that, it can be just you and me again, like always. I overestimated you all these years, she added. First, I thought you loved me as much as I loved you. Second, I thought you were fairly intelligent, Matthew replied, noting the disdain on Christine's face. Sensing her confusion, he elaborated. Christine, a no-fault divorce doesn't mean no one's at fault. It just means the state doesn't want to deal with assigning blame and dividing assets. I'm not afraid to tell the world that I cheated because you were unfaithful. What do you think the boys will say to that? Christine stammered, her voice trembling. You wouldn't ruin my relationship with my sons just to get back at me, you scumbag, she hissed. No, not to ruin your relationship, but to accurately tell my side of the story, Matthew shot back, his tone laced with bitterness. The truth hurts, doesn't it, Christine? He continued confidently. You had sex with him in his bed. Now you have to lie in it. Besides, what have I ever done to give you the impression that I would tolerate you sleeping with another guy? The next day, both of the couple's sons were shocked to hear their father's revelation. Are you sure, Dad? That doesn't sound like Mom at all, Anthony, the couple's oldest, exclaimed incredulously when Matthew called her first. She and her lover even had a painting done showing her after sex. It's hanging above his bar, and they and the rest of their staff think it's great fun. No, that's ridiculous, Matthew insisted. Anthony, please listen to my whole story before jumping to conclusions, Ethan. 2 years younger, interjected calmly. Wow, Dad, what did you do to piss Mom off? Ethan asked, his voice filled with disbelief. She would never have done something like this without being provoked. Matthew fell silent for a few seconds, pondering how to respond to his son's disbelief. I think I let her down after all these years, he finally admitted. He was younger, bigger, more forceful, basically someone new and different. I'm not buying it, Dad, sorry, Ethan asserted firmly. Believe what you want, Ethan. She betrayed me, and I'm not going to accept that, Matthew replied resolutely. Christine was served with divorce papers a week later. She attempted to contest it, urging the judge to consider marital counseling. It seemed like the judge was sympathetic to her plea until Matthew brought up the naked painting of her hanging in Peter Anderson's home. The judge looked taken aback by Matthew's revelation. Naked and quite satisfied, from the looks of things, Mrs. Richardson, in another man's house, he remarked gravely. Christine began to respond when her attorney intervened, placing a hand on her arm to silence her. It's better to remain silent than admit to being unfaithful, especially after cheating on your husband, he whispered urgently. 4 months later, the divorce was finalized, with assets split evenly and the house sold as part of the settlement. Christine moved in with her lover, while Matthew relocated to a small apartment near his workplace. Meanwhile, Benjamin Anderson poured himself a single malt at his bar, his gaze lingering on the painting of his former lover, Christine Richardson. Recalling the fun they had during the painting sessions, Benjamin remembered how Christine's face showed satisfaction after their encounters. With her husband starting to suspect her affair, they decided to preemptively expose it, intending to shock and humiliate him. Both believed Matthew, typically quiet and unassuming, would acquiesce to the new arrangement. However, if he resisted, Christine planned to claim half of Matthew's assets, while Benjamin would continue to enjoy her company. Yet, despite the divorce being over a year ago, tension had begun to simmer between Christine and Benjamin. She grew clingier, despite Benjamin's clear stance against marriage. As their relationship reached a year and a half, Christine noticed a waning in the passion of their affair, along with a decline in intimacy with Matthew. She reminisced about the 18 years of affectionate gestures, realizing the disparity between love and lust, with only the first letter of both words in common. 4 months later, Christine settled into her own small apartment following her split with Benjamin Anderson. A week later, she was reassigned to assist one of the newer attorneys at the firm. While she anticipated the change, The pay and benefits remained unchanged, making her somewhat relieved about the transition. Her new boss was a handsome, ambitious Georgetown law graduate. Observing his hotshot attorney demeanor, Christine wondered if it came with his Juris Doctor degree. It didn't take long, just 2 weeks, before her new boss made a move, planting a gentle kiss on Christine. Despite vowing not to let him get to her, Christine found herself succumbing to his advances. 4 weeks into her new role, the 40-year-old Christine had her legs over the shoulders of her 33-year-old lawyer boss as they engaged intimately in his bed. Wasn't that something? Anderson remarked of the young attorney a couple of weeks later. That painting over your bar was just a tease. She's quite talented. Agreed. I got rid of that painting, Mr. Hotshot responded. Donated it to a high-end strip club about an hour from here for $3,000 cash. I can write off the full purchase price on my taxes. The two lawyers shared a conspiratorial laugh. The nightclub wasn't Matthew's usual scene on a Friday night. However, when Jerry Sanders, his oldest son's best man, organized the bachelor party there, Matthew felt obligated to attend. Out of respect, Matthew presumed the older man would stay for the obligatory length of time at the high-end club in Massachusetts, where the party of 21 had arrived. After passing the identification check at the door, they proceeded down a corridor leading to the main area of the club. Just before entering the open main room, Jerry, acting as the evening's host, was the first to notice it. Oh hell, look at that. That might be the hottest painting I've ever seen in my life. All of my women have that look after I'm done with them, exclaimed Noah Barnes, another Anthony's groomsman. Holy, it can't be, Jerry yelled, abruptly halting as he read the name tag attached to the painting. As Jerry fell silent, Noah, without realizing the significance of what he was looking at, read the tag aloud for the whole group. Thou shalt not covet, Christine Richardson, as painted by Emil Gaultier. Hey, Anthony, she's got the same name, Noah blurted out. As the realization dawned on him, Noah fell silent. The others in the group pressed forward to read the card, and Anthony's face turned pale. As he read the card and studied the painting, Ethan quickly glanced at his father, then at his younger brother. Matthew simply shrugged as Ethan's face flushed crimson. Been there. Seeing that, Matthew remarked to both boys, continuing to walk ahead. The sons exchanged a bewildered look as the rest of the party gathered around 3 tables on one side of the stage, waiting for Matthew to address the situation. This is how your mother and her scum-sucking attorney lover broke the news to me that she was cheating on me, Matthew began, gesturing towards the painting mounted on the wall behind the bar at Benjamin's house. It didn't have a card on it, but I immediately knew what and who I was looking at. They had the painter dye her hair redhead to be cute, but I recognized her right away. It was at a Christmas party at his house, and apparently everyone at the law firm knew they were involved and had seen the painting. Your mother and her scumsucker both found it hysterical that I found out, Matthew explained, his tone laced with bitterness. I don't know how the painting got here, Dad. You've got to get them to take that down. That's Mom, Ethan urged his father. I'll go talk to the manager, but began Matthew's response, his voice trailing off. You didn't seem too concerned with what she was doing when I first told you several years ago. I seem to recall you wondering what I did to make her mad at me, Ethan admitted sheepishly, feeling the weight of the accusing stares from the group. Please, Dad, do something, he urged. Matthew appeared to be the calmest person in the group. He quietly rose from his seat, made his way to the bar, and requested to speak to the manager. After a period of animated discussion and some raised voices, Matthew returned to the group, who had fallen into an unusual silence for a strip club setting. The manager says the owner bought the painting from a private individual, and it's become quite popular here. If I want to take him down, I can buy it for $7,000, Matthew relayed to the group. I told him I have no desire to spend $7,000 on an erotic painting of my cheating ex-wife, Matthew said firmly, echoing the sentiments of both Anthony and Ethan, who wailed in dismay. With that, the evening's activities came to an abrupt end. Following the incident, both of Matthew's sons headed straight to their mother's apartment. Upon returning to Milwaukee, Matthew retired to his own apartment and slept soundly, feeling a sense of closure. Christine appeared worn out as she settled into the groom's parents' row just minutes before the wedding was set to begin. Matthew couldn't help but notice her disheveled appearance, considering the ordeal of explaining the awkward situation regarding the nude painting to their sons the previous night. "Well, last night wasn't too awkward," Matthew remarked sarcastically as Christine took her seat a few feet away from him in the church pew. "Did you know that scumsucker sold that painting?" "Not until last night. I didn't," she replied, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Since their divorce 4 years ago, Matthew and Christine had spent little time in each other's company. Despite the circumstances, Matthew couldn't deny that Christine still looked good, albeit with red, teary eyes after the ceremony and the mother-son dance. Throughout the reception, Christine was a sought-after dance partner, especially among Anthony's friends. After dealing with some overly forward dance partners, Christine returned to their table and remarked to Matthew, "There was a time when you would have put a stop to this pretty quickly." "There was a time when you were my wife and my concern," Matthew murmured quietly. "Then you became somebody else's concern. Now, I guess the concern is yours alone. But from what I remember, and the rumor mill says, you like them young. Just try to be somewhat discreet tonight, for the boy's sake." Christine's irritation was evident on her face, though she remained silent. She couldn't understand how her ex-husband knew about her recent relationships with younger men, especially since she had been seated at the table with Matthew and other founding members, not dancing or engaging in any private conversation. Observing Matthew out of the corner of her eye, Christine couldn't help but notice how the past 4 years had treated him. Despite a few more lines on his face and some graying hair, he still possessed the same piercing blue eyes and striking jawline as when they first met. God, I left this man for, what? A little more sex, a little more aggressive sex. What an idiot, Christine thought to herself. "Yeah, sis, you blew it big time," whispered Christine's sister, Grace, into her ear, causing Christine to snap out of her reverie. "Tell me I just didn't say that out loud," Christine replied, slightly flustered. Her sister giggled before responding quietly, "No, but the looks you've been giving Matthew haven't been too subtle. You might as well just ask him to screw you silly while we're all sitting here. Actually, not screw me silly, just to make slow, passionate love to me, like we used to do, then cuddle together after. Nobody has done that to me since we split." "Maybe, if you asked him nicely," Hannah said. "After all, it is Matthew, the nicest guy in the world. If he still loves you half as much as he used to." If asked, the nicest guy in the world would have admitted to still loving his ex-wife, at least to some extent. He was also smart enough to know, though, that he would never trust Christine again, nor would he be able to recover from her betrayal with Anderson. Matthew didn't even attempt to date for the first year after his divorce, although there were several women in his workplace who made it known that they would welcome his advances once they found out he was single. In the next few years, he came to find out that single women significantly outnumbered single men in his age range. Finding dates was not a problem, getting over his trust issues was a problem. In fact, Matthew woke up in his apartment the morning after the wedding with a beautiful blonde, Charlotte Campbell, and Anthony's bride sitting at the Campbell family table, watching various young men dancing and groping the groom's mother. She kept looking back and forth between the dancing and Matthew's reaction to it, or rather, his lack of reaction. She and virtually everyone else at the wedding had heard the tale of Anthony's parents, and she was trying to gauge the continuing level of affection Anthony's handsome father had for his ex. Discerning that Matthew wasn't carrying a torch for his ex, Charlotte made her way over to the Richardson family table and asked the patriarch if he wanted to dance. When Matthew looked at her, he was greeted with the sight of a striking blonde beauty with long legs, dressed in a dark blue dress tailored to her every curve. Seeing that she had no rings on her left hand, he smiled and got out of his chair. Thanks to Christine's love of dancing, Matthew had taken lessons early in their marriage and was quite adept on the floor. The pair cut a dashing figure together. They even managed to chat during the slow songs as Charlotte snuggled in close. After that dance, Matthew didn't spend much more time at the groom's family table. When he and Charlotte weren't dancing, they were seated together at the bride's family table, and their eyes seemed to be only for each other. Matthew found out that the 44-year-old Charlotte taught high school about an hour away from Milwaukee and had been divorced for 10 years from an abusive husband. "If you don't mind me asking, how does a beautiful woman like yourself stay on the market for 10 years? Matthew inquired. "Major trust issues for one. Plus, "I don't just jump into bed with any man," she answered matter-of-factly. "Good answer," said Matthew, smiling. Matthew and Charlotte worked on their trust issues together, and about a year later, there was a second wedding, uniting the Richardson and Campbell families. Anthony stood up as best man for her father. Internal Revenue Service Special Agent Michael Richardson ensured that Peter Anderson was audited 10 years in a row, costing the attorney more than $1.5 million in additional taxes and fines. Anderson was a few minutes late, heading into the IRS building for his 10th straight audit. His accountant was already inside. Anderson knew that someone must have targeted him with the IRS, but he had so many enemies. The list was long, and he didn't have the time to check them all out. These IRS blows were costing him plenty, Anderson thought as he walked toward the building. If he ever found out who ratted him out, there would be hell to pay, because he was Peter Anderson, and nobody messed with him. Lost in his thoughts, Anderson's mind wandered through the tumultuous memories of the day, oblivious to the dangers lurking in the shadows of the street. Suddenly, without warning, a figure emerged from the darkness, shrouded in anonymity by a baseball hat and dark sunglasses. Anderson barely had time to register the stranger's presence before agony ripped through his body, a searing pain that seemed to tear through his very core. In a split second, his world shattered as he collapsed to the unforgiving pavement, his breath stolen away by the sheer intensity of the assault. As Anderson lay writhing in agony, the world around him seemed to blur into a chaotic haze. The crackle of the stun gun echoed faintly in his ears, a cruel reminder of the violence that had befallen him. With each blow that rained down upon him, he felt his very essence being torn asunder. The sickening crunch of bone breaking, the metallic tang of blood in his mouth, the sharp stab of pain radiating from every inch of his battered form. It all melded into a nightmarish symphony of suffering that threatened to consume him whole. Try as he might to fight against the tide of agony, Anderson found himself drowning in a sea of torment, his consciousness slipping away with each merciless blow. As the darkness closed in around him, Anderson's mind raced with a dizzying array of thoughts and emotions. Fear, confusion, anger. A whirlwind of raw, primal instincts surged through him, each one vying for dominance in the maelstrom of his shattered psyche. Yet amidst the chaos, a chilling realization dawned upon him. He was utterly and completely helpless, at the mercy of his assailant's cruel whims. In that final, agonizing moment, Anderson could only watch in horror as the shadowy figure loomed over him, a silent spectre of doom poised to deliver the final, fatal blow. In the aftermath of the brutal assault, Anderson lay broken and battered, a mere shell of his former self. As the haze of pain and confusion began to ebb away, he was left to grapple with the harsh reality of his situation. That he had been the victim of a senseless act of violence perpetrated by a faceless assailant with motives unknown. And yet, amidst the wreckage of his shattered existence, a flicker of defiance ignited within him, a stubborn refusal to surrender to despair. Anthony grinned as he pocketed the weapon, removed 2 teeth lodged in his shoe, and continued walking. Friends, please share your thoughts in the comments. Have a great day.
The moral of the story is that betrayal and arrogance ultimately lead to one's downfall, while dignity, loyalty, and resilience pave the way to a better life. Christine traded a devoted husband of 18 years for fleeting passion and ego, losing everything of real value in the process. Matthew's quiet strength allowed him to walk away from toxicity and find true love. Furthermore, the story highlights that the bonds of family are unbreakable. You cannot destroy a good man without eventually facing the consequences, as karma, sometimes delivered by fiercely loyal loved ones, always collects its debts.